Hello, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Layla, and today I'm going to be talking about my career and income progression every year of my 20s. A few weeks ago, I posted a video talking about how I went from a net worth of $0 to $100,000 in 2 years and 3 months. And in that video, I did go into a little bit of detail of my financial journey, but I did receive a few comments asking for even more detail, kind of breaking down my career, like my income, all of those years, as well as how much I was investing. I think that's a great idea, and also I feel like my numbers are pretty realistic overall. As somebody who went through like a normal path, or like I guess society's normal path, which is definitely what I followed, where you go to school, get a higher education, get an even higher education by getting your master's. I feel like everything kind of worked out as expected. And then obviously I was trying to build up my income on the side by working on YouTube and my various other side income sources. I am going to break this down by age, so from age 20 through 30. Figured I would just do a whole decade. This is also going to be broken down by year though, because my birthday falls right in the middle of the year. I have a July birthday. I do want to give a shout out to Sabrina Gonzalez. She popped up on my YouTube feed and I was going to make this video, but I saw her video pop up. It was like her career progression or something like that. And she is 25, but she was going through the age of 20, 21 and all the way through where she is now. And I liked that format, so inspired by Sabrina, but also adding a little bit more in there by sharing kind of my financial journey within it, so investing and that sort of thing. All right, so we're going to start at the age of 20. This would have been, I turned 20 in 2013, and I was a sophomore/junior in college, because it's, like I said, it's kind of weird with my birthday being in the middle of the year and talking about it. Also, you have 2 school years in the year, so y'all get the idea. But yes, I was still in college. I know before this, like the semester, my final semester of my sophomore year in college, I was working at the university bookstore. And I was working part-time, obviously, because I was a full-time student, and I was making $7.25 an hour. I also lived on campus my sophomore year of college, and I was making like $50 per paycheck. Like, it was nothing. And so whenever I'd get my paycheck, I would have to go grocery shopping, and I literally only was buying groceries. Like, that's all I could do. If I was buying anything else, it was being put on a credit card, which is why I had credit card debt by the time I graduated. But yes, I did not have a food plan while living on campus, so all I could afford to buy was groceries with these paychecks. That's what I did. And by the time the summer came around, I got a new job at a doggy daycare. And I would be the bather, the dog bather, and I was getting paid $9 an hour. And I remember when she told me, I remember being in the interview and the woman interviewing me told me that it would be $9 per hour. And I thought that was so much money. I was like, oh my God, that's like, please, I need to get this job, because that was like a huge jump from $7.25 an hour. Plus I would have been full time because we were going into the summer. But all in all, I probably made less than $15,000 for the full year of 2013 while I was 20 years old. And I definitely was going into further debt. That was from student loans as well as credit card debt. I was not investing whatsoever. One other thing that happened in 2013 when I was 20 years old, this was like November 2013, my sister and I moved in together. It was only under her name, but we bought a house and moved into that house that year. So I stopped living on campus, and then next year, 2014, I was 21, and I was a junior half the year, rising senior in college. I was still working at the same doggy daycare. I probably got a tiny little raise at some point, like maybe I was getting $9.75 per hour instead of $9. I can't remember, to be honest. I was still in school full time, so during the semester I was working at the doggy daycare part time, and then in the summertime I would work full time. So for all of 2021, I would say I made somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000, but nothing crazy. I think at some point when I was 21, I opened my Roth IRA. And this was only so I could save on taxes. And honestly, I can't remember. I could pull out my tax statements, but I just don't want to. I have like a filing system and it's a mess. So I'm pretty sure that's when I opened my Roth IRA, and I initially funded it with like $1,700, maybe $2,000. And that was so I could get like a big tax break because I was low income and I had a little bit in savings. I think my savings was because of my student loan debt, to be honest. Like I got a refund. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I invested with debt at the time, and this was so I could save money on my taxes. But I was not educated in finance, and I just took poor financial advice. I think opening a Roth IRA was a wise decision at this time, but I was told to go to State Farm and open a Roth IRA, and that was a huge financial mistake. And that is why I ultimately switched it over a few years later. But yes, I started at a State Farm. I have no clue what I was invested in, but at least something was invested, I guess. That was it. I didn't touch it for some time. Moving on to the age of 22, or the year 2015, I did finish my bachelor's degree in 2015, so I graduated, but immediately after I started my master's, I was still going to school full-time. I was still working at the doggy daycare, and again, I maybe got a little raise at some point in there for $10 and some change per hour, I'm not sure. But then I was also a lab TA, and by being a lab TA, my full tuition was covered for my master's degree, except for like the fees that come with going to university, like paying for the gym and the bus. That's like a couple thousand per semester. So I still had to pay for those fees, but they covered my tuition. I was still going into further student loan debt though, because what I was being paid from the doggy daycare plus what I was being paid from being a TA was not enough to cover what I needed to pay for. So I took out more loans to live off of. I think from being a TA, I was making like $800 per month for 3 to 4 months. It was like $3,000 something per semester. So all in all, for the age of 22, I was still probably making less than $20,000, and I was not investing. I was still just going into further debt. Then at the age of 23, this would be in 2016, I graduated with my master's. I made sure to finish as soon as possible. So my program was 2 years. That's how long it was supposed to take. But I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to, I took on more classes. I took summer classes. I took Maymester classes so I could finish in 1.5 years because I was so burnt out and done with school. It was just a lot because I was working 2 jobs, going to school full time. I had to do research in the lab, and I was like writing a paper. It was very stressful. So I did graduate with my master's. This was actually at the end of 2016. It was in December because, like I said, I finished the semester early. I was still working at the doggy daycare. I think at this point I was at like $12 and some change per hour. I remember asking for raises and like barely getting anything. So I worked at this doggy daycare for 4 years. And so I was like a very good worker. My boss would always say like, oh, she's my favorite bather. I was training people and part of the hiring process because of all of that. So I was just like annoyed with being paid $12 and some change. Like I wanted more. Still a TA during this time. So my final, I was in the spring semester, also the summer semester. So I got a little bit more money. And then in the fall semester, my final semester of school, I was still a TA. But altogether, I still probably made less than $20,000. I was definitely not investing. One thing I forgot to mention with the doggy daycare, I was getting tips as well, so that helps. But the total income is still the same. Then we get into 2017, which was a very rough year for me, one of the worst years of my life. I turned 24 in 2017. After graduating college, I started working full-time at the doggy daycare, and I knew I didn't want to do anything with my degree. As y'all know, it's just been a struggle. Ever since I've gone to school, I didn't ever want a regular job. I just always knew that I wanted more out of life. But so I continued working at the doggy daycare, and I really wanted to be a blogger at the time. So I was trying to build up my blog on the side. However, once we got 6 months into 2017, I had to start paying back my student loans, and I was making the $12 and some change per hour at the doggy daycare plus tips, and it was just not enough money. I had $50,000 of student loan debt. I think my minimum payment at the time was $200 something, but having to pay the house plus the student loans plus my credit card debt, like all these things, I was like, okay, I need to get a actual career, a job in relation to my degree. So I was applying to dozens of relevant jobs, but that was a struggle. And at some point in the summertime, I had told my boss, because I was too nice, don't ever do this. I had told my boss, hey, within the next 3 months or so, like, I'm out of here because I need a higher paying job. I was just being nice. I wanted them to prepare. It was hard to find really good dog bathers. I know that sounds silly, but people suck. Like, the people I worked with at the doggy daycare as bathers, like, they were not good. And so I wanted to give a heads up out of respect for this stupid company. And that was a mistake, because what ended up happening is they hired somebody to replace me sooner than expected. And so they put me down to part-time. And obviously because of that, I was making barely any money. I had all these bills to pay. I was just going into further debt. And then also, because I was no longer full-time, I lost my insurance. So I had to pay for my own health insurance. It was just a mess. I was still applying to jobs relevant to my degree, which was biology. But I think it was in September, like August or September of 2017, I started working at an urgent care, front desk at an urgent care, making like $12.75 an hour. I was working full-time at this urgent care, but they were open for 12 hours each day, so I was working 12-hour shifts. 3 12-hour shifts per week, and then sometimes I would pick up a 4th day and go into overtime, which was actually nice because you get, time and a half. But I was barely making any money. It was like on a monthly basis, $2,000 something per month, and it still wasn't enough to pay for what I needed to pay for. All in all, for the age of 24, or the year 2017, I probably made a total of like $25,000. And I was not investing. I do remember that there was a 401k available to me at the urgent care, but I was like, I can't. There's no way that I could sacrifice any of my income. I remember one time while working here, it was like the 2018 to 2019 flu season. Before COVID, this was a really bad flu season. Like, we were super busy at the urgent care, and I got sick. I got the flu. And I had never had the flu before this, but of course I got it. I tested positive for it while I was at work, but it was like the nurses helping me. They were like secretive about it. They didn't tell the doctor. And I was like, please don't tell them. Like, I need to work my days this week because I'm not going to have enough money. Like, I have to work, because if I didn't work, it would just be, I wouldn't get paid time off or anything. I didn't have sick leave. So I was like, I need to work. I'll wear a mask. So I worked 3 days in a row with the flu, like half dying, just pretending to be okay. And I know that's not great to do. But I was like, I need the money. Like, I can't stay home. So, yeah, not a good time. And I would cry so much from that job because people were so mean. It was just stressful to be front desk at an urgent care where people are sick and impatient and frustrated. And I'm like, whew, okay. Anywho, bad memories. So then we get to 2018 and I turn 25, and one of my peers that I worked with while I was in grad school, he was like in school getting his PhD while I was getting my master's, and he also worked in the same lab or like neighboring labs as I did. He was like, hey, there's this job available. So I worked at the CDC. I was a fellow. It's something called an ORISE fellow. So we're not actual like employees at the CDC, but we work at the CDC campus in Atlanta. And he called me letting me know that there was this opportunity because he knew that I was looking for a job related to my degree. And this job was being a research fellow, basically just a microbiologist. I had my interview for this job in February of 2018, but I didn't actually start until April. Anything with the government is super slow. Like, they just take their time, especially with the CDC. So I didn't start there until April. I was still working full-time at the urgent care. But when I started at the CDC as an ORISE fellow, I think my base salary was like $53,000. So since I started a little bit later in the year, I would say altogether for 2018, or the age of 25, I made like $40,000 to $45,000. And I was not investing at this time. There was, as an ORISE fellow, you don't get any sort of benefits. They do have health insurance that they offer to you, but you have to pay for that. Like, they have an offer, but it comes from our salary, and then they don't give any sort of retirement benefit. It's really weird. Like, the whole system is kind of sketchy to me. Like, they have this workaround to have us work without benefits. Like, we're contractors, but we're not contractors. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyways, in 2018, y'all have probably heard me say this a million times, but this is when like my actual debt-free journey started, because I reached my highest point of debt, which was $82,200. And I didn't invest any money during this time because I was just cleaning everything up. I'm like, okay, I need to start taking this stuff seriously because I have a lot of debt. And now that I have this legitimate career and I am making more money, I can do something about it. So that's when my debt-free journey started, and I started getting heavily very focused on my finances and obsessed with it. Then the next year, 2019, I turned 26 years old. I was still working as a microbiologist, and then I moved out on my own. So February 2019, I lived alone. I did start making some money from like online income. I think the years prior I did too, maybe like 1,000 or so from the whole year. But in 2019 is where I started to see things pick up a little bit. So I would say altogether I made like 60,000 from my full-time job as well as from what I made online. I think what I made online was like 5,000. I also started investing a little bit during this time. So in 2019, I invested $1,200 into my Roth IRA. I also was saving, like I was paying down debt very heavily, but saving a little bit at the same time. I don't really know the numbers on that. A lot of it was to sinking funds. So me wanting to save for specific things like travel or gifts. So yeah, I'm really going to focus on the investing because I think that's more important here. Then we get to 2020. I turned 27, and we all know what happened in 2020. I was still working as a microbiologist at the CDC, which that was a crazy time because I remember when it first came around and they were like, hey, you got to go home because COVID is going around. And I remember being in the office with who I had shared my office with. I was like, I think it'll be like 2 weeks, right? Like we'll come back in 2 weeks or so. They'll just give us a little break and we'll come back. So I was having to work from home, which you can't really do that as a microbiologist. It was just like a lot of busy work, writing, researching, blah, 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 kind of just sitting there doing nothing. But turns out it's like a whole 2 years later when they start letting us come back to the office full time. But yes, I was still working there. I was part of the COVID response that year, so it was kind of like dealing with emails from people and getting a subject matter expert, get their opinion on it to reply back to these people and email them. It was like hospitals and stuff that were reaching out to the CDC, so I was kind of the middleman for that. Just very interesting times to look back on. Like, how was that a part of my life, you know? It's just crazy. That year, though, I probably made a total of $65,000, and that also includes what I made from online income. And I did invest a little bit to my Roth IRA. That was $1,400, but I was heavily focused on paying down my debt, as y'all know. Then we get to 2021. I turned 28 that year. I was still working as a microbiologist. At this point, we did have to start coming back to work because we started doing COVID research. We were collecting wastewater from sewage and then having to analyze that, seeing where, like, if there was going to be an outbreak of COVID, you could see it in the sewage. So I really didn't enjoy that work because I was a microbiologist. I enjoy microbiology work, but we were doing a lot of molecular biology, which to me is not fun. It was like I couldn't work on my project that I was supposed to be working on because COVID. We just had to do COVID research. So yeah, COVID really changed my life, honestly, because I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to keep doing this. And I knew that it wouldn't be forever, but I just was tired of it. So that's when I started looking at other career options. 2021 was also a rough year for me because this is when I had a couple of surgeries and just a lot of health issues that I was dealing with. And then I was eventually diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And this was just a complete shock to me. It really changed my life too. So because I was having all these health issues and because I had Crohn's disease, but also because we had just come off like 1.5 years of being home for the most part, I was like, I want a remote job. So that was also motivation for me looking to change my career. And I learned about Salesforce in 2021. So I started studying it. But for all of 2021, at the age of 28, I made about $76,000 gross. And that does include what I made from my online income. I put $2,350 to my Roth IRA. And then that year was when M1 Finance was pretty big. So I looked at my numbers and it looks like I put about, well, it was all from referrals, like about $4,500 to my brokerage account with referrals. So that year I had invested the most I'd ever invested, which you can see it was like $6,000, $7,000, but I still had a negative net worth. I reached a positive net worth though at the end of 2021. Then we get to 2022. I turned 29. I switched careers. I became a Salesforce consultant. That job started in March of 2022. When I started my new job, this was barely a pay increase. So my base salary when I started as a Salesforce consultant was $60,000. But the big difference that came in was my healthcare was being covered, like it wasn't being taken out of what I was receiving. I also had a 401k available to me with a match, a 6% match, which I didn't have before. So all in all, it was definitely worth it to me. Plus I got to work remote and that was like number one most important thing. So it really worked out. Altogether in 2022, I probably made about $87,000, including what I made from my online income. I did max out my Roth for that year. It took me until 2023 to do that. So that was $6,500 total though for the year. And then I was contributing 6% to my 401k, which was about $3,000 total that year from me, and then my company matched that $3K. But when I was actually the age of 29, like on my 29th birthday, my net worth was around $15,000. Then we get to 2023, which really kind of changed things for me. This is actually getting into the age of 30. So I turned 30 in 2023, but we're going to finish here. I still was working as a Salesforce consultant. I had gotten a pay increase at the end of 2022, but then I got promoted in 2023, which came with a 12% pay increase, but it wasn't that big of a jump because my income was already kind of low for what I was doing. So it was like a base salary of $70,000 or so. But I made a lot from online income altogether. That was like $44,000, $45,000 plus $70,000 plus my work bonus. And I made like $120,000 to $130,000 at the age of, well, for 2023, and this would be the age of 30. I did max out my Roth IRA in 2023. That was $7,000. And then I put a total of about $8,000 to my 401k, plus my company matched 6%. They didn't do the full $8,000 because that I had gone over the 6%, but maybe like $4,000 or so from them. And on my 30th birthday, my net worth was about $65,000. I then reached a net worth of $100,000 still at the age of 30, and that was in March of 2024. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of my progress was made toward the end of my 20s. I was saving in my high yield savings account. The bulk of that was to my emergency fund, but every year that was growing a little bit. I became debt free, which that helped because now I didn't have any debt working against me. The interest, I wasn't paying any interest, so I was able to save and invest more. I really took advantage of my higher income, so obviously it did take quite some time to build up my business and get that going, but I took advantage of that by just saving and investing heavily, and that's how I was able to get to $100,000 net worth pretty quickly. I also made a lot of mistakes throughout my 20s. As y'all know, I have a whole video talking about my worst financial mistakes and what those ended up costing me. I can link that down below because I think that's important too. But yeah, I just kept pushing through. But that's it. That was my path. Let me know if y'all have any questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one.